Welcome to Sankofa Pan-African series. Please support us through Patreon and by buying me coffee. Don't just subscribe to this channel. Turn on the notification button, share our videos, and check out our website, sankofastorybooks.com, for history, Afrocentric stories, and other resources for children. Hadi Yakubu is the coordinator of the Africans Rising movement. Hadi has a long history of Pan-African organizing, having served as the Africans Rising Interim Movement Coordinator and the Africans Rising Engagement, Collaboration, and Capacity Building Lead before his appointment as coordinator. Hadi Yakubu's background in activism also includes mobilizing and advocacy roles with different institutions across the African continent. He'll be talking to us about the Borderless Africa movement and how we all can participate in making it a reality. So, welcome Hadi Yakubu to the Sankofa Pan-African series. I'm really excited to be talking to you because I'm very excited about the work you're doing.
Thank you so much.
But before we go on to talk about the Borderless Africa movement, please first explain to us about your organization, Africans Rising. What's it about? Why was it set up? What's its purpose? And who are its members?
Okay. Africans Rising is a Pan-African movement comprising individuals, activists, social movements, organizations, CSOs, NGOs, numbering about 40,000 across the 55 African countries and some other countries in the diaspora. In America, in North America, Europe. We're not trying to reach the African family in Asia as well, to expand the
I assume the Caribbean is well represented.
Yes, the Caribbean is well represented. The purpose of Africans Rising is to build Pan-African solidarity and unity of purpose amongst African peoples. African peoples both on the continent and in the diaspora. And this is really important because everything that you do as an African collective, we have to remember that includes family in the diaspora, because it is one and the same family that got dispersed, and we have to work together in order to be able to achieve the common purpose. So the purpose of Africans Rising is to create that Pan-African solidarity. How did it come about? Somewhere 2015. And just a little bit prior to that, you would have heard the narrative that the media began to create about Africa Rising. And that narrative, that conversation was mainly based on the high GDP growth rates that were being recorded in many African countries.
And also anticipated, the anticipation at the time where there will be continued growth.
Exactly. And a lot of, for a number of years from that time, literally 6 out of the 10 fastest growing economies were in Africa for a number of years. But some people began to ask questions, right? That why are people saying Africa is rising without regard to what is happening to Africans? Now, when you push that narrative of Africa rising, are you talking about the conditions, the material economic conditions of the African people, wherever they may be, or you are talking about Africa as a geographical entity? Because goods and services produced in Africa, the geographical entity, may not necessarily bring about or be
prosperity
or be owned by the Africans. And so the analysis, if you go beyond the figures, Ghana, 2011 posted 14% growth, Equatorial Guinea, and some other, Angola. These were the they call them what is the fastest animal in the, they call them cheetahs, like those that that's what they call
the speed of the economic growth.
The speed of the economy
compared to cheetahs, yes.
Exactly. But then you go behind the figures and you see that these growth figures are mainly from extractives: gold, oil, diamond, so and so. And then you ask a second question: who owns these extractive companies?
The companies, yes, that make the profit from the extracted resources.
Exactly. Then you see that none of them belongs to any African. None of them belongs to any African. All of the money, yes, in fact, there is so much money coming out of these extractives, but it is being taken out by foreign multinational companies that do not in any way have any connection to any Africans anywhere. Not Africans on the continent, not Africans in the diaspora. Belongs to white monopoly, international monopoly capital that extracts these and make enormous profits out of them. So the narrative of Africa rising is not accurate. It is misleading. It doesn't present the right picture. And then they began to talk about creating a counter narrative about Africans themselves, a narrative that concerns the people. Because you see, when you talk about Africa, the geographical entity, you are not able to distinguish all these things. But if you talk about the people, then your narrative will include the right mix of the feelings and circumstances and the livelihoods and the nature of lives that people are living. And this is the most important thing in development discourse. Yeah. If you have the buildings, if you have infrastructure, and the people are not happy, the people are
in poverty, don't have access to education, healthcare, roads,
and everything, livelihood. All your economic indicators can be flying out of the roof. If none of this is going in the right direction, your economic indicators are useless.
So this movement, so how are you positioned, to kind of turn this situation around?
Yes.
Africans rising.
Yes, Africans rising. So they place the narrative on, like, the emphasis on the people, and so that let us create a movement, not an organization, not an NGO, another international NGO with all these bureaucracy. Let's create a movement owned by the people, which will build solidarity. Because despite the fact that these resources are coming out of the land of the Africans, the circumstances and the conditions across the continent are very similar. And you can see, if you travel around, that the issues are quite very similar. So let's create a movement where Africans across these colonial borders can interact, can connect, can discuss, and form a unity of purpose to drive our own agenda. An agenda that is not dictated by anybody, an agenda that is wholly ours. And therefore, that is how Africans Rising came to be created. The full name actually was Africans Rising for Justice, Peace, and Dignity. Just last year, we amended the name at the General Assembly to add unity to it. So Africans Rising for Unity, Justice, Peace, and Dignity. This is a long name, but we've shortened it to Africans Rising. So
and it's important, this issue of Africa, global Africa, having an agenda. We've done, I mean, the truth of the matter was that before Europe actually recognized the need of a common agenda, which then resulted in the EU, our first generation of African independence fathers like Nkrumah had the vision.
Yes.
They had the vision for a Pan-African agenda that would help all of us to rise collectively. And by implication also, because once one of us is oppressed, all of us are oppressed.
Absolutely.
And by implication, they actually, their view was not just even global Africa. I mean, not just continental Africa. They always had, the Caribbean in mind, the Africans in diaspora in the US and other parts of the world as part of that, Pan-African agenda. But somehow or the other, the colonial countries saw that as a threat and did everything to thwart that Pan-African agenda. And right now, how is an organization like yours poised to actually succeed, where so many else have failed? And with all due respect to the AU, the AU cannot deliver the agenda we need so long as the AU continues to be financed, by the UN and non-African countries. They will continue to dictate our progress. So what is the way forward? I mean, how has your organization, how do you envision, succeeding against so many obstacles?
So what we do is a wholly people-to-people connection. So the whole Africans Rising idea was premised on Pan-African solidarity, that we would be able to create a platform where African peoples can connect. And you build solidarity by getting to a point where people can feel the pain of others. Because the logic of solidarity is that if something happens to one, it happens to all.
Yes.
So we are connecting the people-to-people solidarity in that way, that we don't have to sit down and allow something to happen in the DRC, and people in South Africa will think that they are not concerned.
Not their business, yes.
It's not their business. Or something to happen in the US to somebody who is part of the African family, and people will sit in Senegal and think that this is not in connection to me.
Yes.
Because, and one thing that Kwame Nkrumah, I'm happy you've mentioned Kwame Nkrumah. The one thing that Kwame Nkrumah had written copiously about is a complete analysis of the African world and how it links to the international class system.
Yes.
There is an international class system which unfortunately ranks people of African descent, Black people everywhere, At the very
Correct.
bottom.
Yes.
Okay.
Next to the animals.
Yes.
In fact, even less than the animals when it comes to environmental issues.
Exactly.
Africans are expected to make sacrifice to save the animals in their environment for the whole of the world without adequate provisions being made to see that those Africans who are supposed to be custodians of those animals in their environments, do not suffer.
Yeah. So for instance, like I know about issues that some people have talked about in terms of racism, even in Canada.
Oh yeah,
the
everywhere.
US and everything. If somebody sees me on the streets of Ottawa or Toronto or something, they're not going to see that this person is a continental African.
Until you open your mouth, black is black.
Exactly.
Until they hear your accents.
And in some measure, that classification should, if we were organized, give us that unity.
And there is precedence.
And
the reason why Israel, as tiny as Israel is, in spite of its recent history, is one of the strongest powers in the world, is because people of Jewish descent all over the world united behind this purpose of seeing that their people settled in a place. They supported him with their morally, financially, psychologically, and that is the strength of Israel today.
Yes. So the way they classify us, for me, I mean, that is how I identify myself. That it should be a measure of unity and and something that we can use to organize. And that is what, as you see, in the game of in the nature of the game, one has to be able to use something that your enemy uses against you and turn it around as
appropriation,
as your strength. Yes.
Yes.
As your strength. The main point that I really want to make is that there is the need for Africans, global African family, to build the strength and power to deter anybody from oppressing us. In history, the only language that bullies and oppressors understand is your ability to stand up to them. Now, we do not need power or strength to be able to use it to oppress others. What we need strength and power for is to be able to prevent other people from oppressing us again and again and again. Because the fact that you would not use your power to oppress others doesn't mean that if others had the opportunity, they would not do the same. And history has shown clearly that where people have power and we don't, we have suffered for it. We have suffered for it. And the only way somebody can, the only way you can prevent yourself from being disrespected and to be treated with the dignity that you deserve is if you have the power of deterrence, right? If today the people know or governments know that if anything happens to an African in Canada or America or anywhere, there is a powerful African nation that will hold them accountable, that has the power of deterrence. Because my mentor always says that human beings will do to you whatever they can do and get away with it. So when do we want to have the power and the opportunity and strength that would make people think twice before killing us, before stealing from us, before exploiting our resources without recourse to the environment, and before doing all these manner of things that they've done to us? Slavery, colonialism, and all of those things continue to shape the institutions of global finance, global economic interactions, global military and geopolitical interactions. And so we have to ask ourselves that so long as these phenomena shape these global things, how are we able, as people who have suffered so much under these past events, able to prevent ourselves from a second scramble and a second enslavement and colonialism?
We will continue this interesting conversation with Hadi Yakubu on Africans rising and borderless Africa movement in the next episode.